Okay, so we are going to, let me just make sure I can share the right slides. What we're going to do, we're going to go through a presentation here around how businesses use predictive analytics to gain a competitive advantage. So what do we mean by that? So first of all, if you indulge me, I'm going to go through a little bit of an introduction as to who I am. Please feel free to go and put questions as we go through. I'll try and answer them at the end unless there's something that really catches my eye, but obviously we'll go through the content first and we'll try and leave as much questions as possible. Really, that's where you're going to add the most value to the process. So, who am I? So, in case you wanted to know what I look like, I don't know if that does look like me, but so I've worked in this space now for around 25 years, working with data, working with analytics, and working with machine learning for a long time. So I've worked here at Cybit now for the last 15 years, worked very, very closely with a lot of our data vendors, so working with people like Microsoft, working with Click. It's going to be quite some Microsoft-centric type conversations today. But I sit on advisory councils with some of our vendors as well, and work very, very closely on strategic boards with some of our customers, giving advice in this, anywhere from very small organizations to big giants of industry, anywhere between. Effectively, doesn't really matter the size of the organization, not the size of the problem. So I'm the Chief Technology Officer, so I do look after everything that we do across the business in terms of the technologies that we use and the vendor engagements that we have. So who are we? So Cybit, we are 30 years old as an organization, more than that, 34 years old, and we are a technology solution provider. So we don't just stop at data, we cover a large, broad aspect of the IT industry, but fundamentally what we're doing is helping with productivity amongst people and amongst organizations. And that means giving them IT to turbocharge what it is that you do, protect what you do, and also to be able to go and give you that predict insight as well. What makes us different is that insight-first approach. So from everything that we do, we're looking at data and AI to shape strategy, but aligning that to business goals. So that's enough about us. These are the broad areas that we cover in terms of our portfolio and solutions. So data and AI is the one that's pertinent for us today. We also do cover modern workspace, cybersecurity, and hybrid cloud, which are the backbones of delivering a lot of these data services. In terms of the type of customers that we work with, to give you an idea of our experience within this, we work heavily across the commercial sector and also public sector as well. Very proud to have the names that we have here. A lot of organizations that we've worked with for a decade plus within the data space, and also the technology partnerships. We have a lot of technology partnerships, but these are the ones that we hold very, very closely when it comes to the data side of things. When it comes to data providers or data technology providers like Microsoft, AWS, Click, as you'd imagine, but also into some of the more niche players where we're looking at agentic AI, which we'll come on to a little bit, and also when we're looking at data risk when it comes to organizations like Sierra. So the topic of the day. So why predictive and why now? So one of the key things for me is that you will be overwhelmed with content around AI. And AI is now being hijacked as a concept to really mean ChatGPT. And I am sure a lot of you will be very, very aware of other GPT type systems, so using things like Claude and Perplexity and Gemini, etc., etc., etc. ChatGPT has always become the Google of the industry, like getting there first with that brand recognition, and it's become synonymous with what modern AI is. Now, that's actually generative AI, and we're talking about language models to be able to do that. You've seen that big shift. We're not looking at projecting numbers within this, we're looking at projecting language, understanding documents and things like that. So today's focus is not going to be, hopefully you'll be really relieved, it's not going to be all about ChatGPT and AI. It's actually going to be regarding a more traditional concept of artificial intelligence, which is more around machine learning. So this is where we're going to be talking about predictive and predictive analytics. So the pain that we see within an organization, so CEO is asking for revenue projections. It could be revenue, it could be cash flow projections, It could be service desk ticket projections, but understanding what is the future. Your team scrambles through Excel files because, let's face it, that's where people still are with a lot of their data sources. You're waiting on delayed reports. Understand that a lot of reports are what's propping up a lot of decision making, very historical, lagging information. And then you deliver insights based on that information. And by the time you've delivered it, it is already outdated. So you already have this lag between data being converted to information, being converted to knowledge. And then by the time that you get to this wisdom, if you've ever seen that kind of data maturity model, when you get to wisdom, you're actually really, really outdated or working on information that potentially wasn't even accurate to start off with. So the shift for us is predictive analytics. That is enabling real-time or close to real-time foresight instead of a post-mortem analysis. We want to look ahead, not in the rearview mirror. So it's not futuristic. It's not been futuristic for a long time. The mid-market, which is really the target audience that we're talking to get today, although the public sector experiences this as well, sees a lot of these technologies as being very, very futuristic and outside of their grasp. I'm trying to talk to you today about how it's not. But ultimately, this is a necessity, being able to go and plan ahead. So the advantage. So when Gartner look at this, and you can take Gartner with a pinch of salt if you want to, but effectively they do have a lot of information to hand and can make some very, very well informed opinions. But they are talking about operationalizing AI, and by this we mean machine learning, by 2026 are expected to outperform their peers by 25% in customer satisfaction. So we're not just looking at how we go and predict a cash flow or a future financial performance. We're also starting to go and look at ways in which we can go and make a customer happy. Okay. So this is, I like this quote from MIT Technology Review. In a world awash with data, prediction is power. So what I plan to show you here is just understand predictive analytics and its strategic role. Forrester, again, research organizations say 90% of data is never used beyond basic reporting. So the first thing we're going to talk about is data maturity. There's a few people who are on the call and in chat who've said that they have attended some of my events before, so you may have seen this slide. But we're going to talk about the analytics maturity model. So why are we doing this? Now, I do not believe that you can take advantage of some of the more advanced concepts of AI, machine learning, and even into generative AI before you've got the basics. So I want you to think about this. I'm going to put a slide in a minute and take a little bit of a poll. Some of you may have seen this before. This is a version of a chart that's been used for many, many years. It's something that I've adapted and extended as our understanding of analytical phases has changed. So first of all, what we do is in the bottom left, we're starting with what's called descriptive analytics. It sounds quite a big term, but effectively it's hindsight, it is what happened. So what does that mean in practice? It's dashboards, it's reports. It's lagging information, it's what happened yesterday, we're getting that information and we are using that to understand what happened in the past. Then we move to insight. So taking that information into diagnostic analytics, we can start to go and say, why did it happen? Now, at the most basic level, we're saying this is drill down, this is correlation, this is root cause. I've always said that there's never, ever a report that's ever given an answer. They only ever give a question. The moment that you're confronted with some information, the next question is, so what? Or why? Or what can we do about it? Diagnostic analytics allows us to take a little bit more of that information or that data in its raw form and start to contextualize it so that you can start to see what that really means to you. That's diagnostic. Now we move from hindsight, insight into foresight. This is where we hit predictive analytics, which is the main topic of today. This is where we can start to say what will happen. So we look at optimization engines, we look at recommendations, and also decision support as part of this. Some of you may have seen this as just a very, very basic analysis to say, okay, our sales are increasing month on month by 10%. could we go and put a forecast trend line on that and project it forward by the next 5 months? And it takes that average and it moves it forward, and all of a sudden you see a basic prediction. That is predictive analytics in a nutshell. What we can do is do things that are more complex than that to understand the causal effects of that and start to understand some of the variances that we can use that impact that prediction. Now, if we go and take a prediction and want to understand if we change one of those factors, what would be the impact, such as, let's go in the world of pricing recommendations, how much do I have to sell this product to go and double my overall profit? Now, you would say, well, sell it for more. But selling it for more could potentially go and reduce the amount of volume that we sell. How about selling it for less? Well, selling it for less is going to reduce our profit. But if we increase the volume, that could make up for the shortfall and even surpass that to go and generate more profit. So what we're doing there is actually running that same predictive model, but changing something. Now, if you do that enough times, what you're going to get is an optimal output. And that is how big retailers go and use machine learning to go and do prescriptive analytics. What should we do for the optimal result? We're not going to talk about the cognitive analytics today because that is the bit that you get hammered over the head with every single day. That is the generative AI piece, visual analytics, natural language processing, agentic AI. We're not going to go and cover those ones today. Happy to go and cover them at other time. Happy to engage with you offline on that. We're going to stick in that world of predictive analytics. So bearing that in mind, I want to know where you are on this journey. So we'll take a little time here. If you scan the QR code, if you're able to, you will be presented with a survey with an obvious typo, but I can't change it. I want to understand, based on that maturity, where are you as an organization right now? How far have you reached? Are you still within the descriptive analytics piece? Have you moved out into the diagnostic, predictive, prescriptive, or you're going to tell me, actually, nope, we're already engaged in heavy AI projects. We're all the way in cognitive. So I should see some of those start to come in. So thank you. A few of them have come in already. So yeah, it's a very, very typical spread. I'll leave it up for a few seconds and we'll just see how many we can get in there. Just checking the attendees and see how many we can get in there. Okay. So hopefully you can, yes, so there's quite a few people accessing it now. So right now that spread is very, very typical as I'd expect. We got a couple more. Great, okay. So feel free to keep adding to that if you haven't answered it already. Oh, predictive's just jumped up a little bit there. That's great. Okay, so I've done this a few times, and each time the spread is quite similar. Is that descriptive is overwhelmingly the norm. So we currently are 37% of the audience are purely at that descriptive level. What will that look like for you? It will look like Power BI dashboards. It will look like automated reports. It will look like analysts producing reports within something like Tableau. It will look like you're using Excel. That is very, very typical, and there is no criticism on that. That is perfectly natural, and every organization will do it. Do not believe anyone who says no one should use Excel. Absolutely, you should, of course. But what we're looking at there is, in effect, personal analytics. That is something done by a person that is being used either for their own personal needs or to disseminate to others. Okay, and that's where you really kind of go from analysis to reporting. Reporting is really for others. So that's where 39% there. The next largest is diagnostic. It's that next level, so 27%. So if I had to take a big guess there, you're using dashboards. You may be using complex, sophisticated Excel sheets to be able to go and do drill down analysis and pivot table functionality to go and create more contextualized information. But fundamentally, you will be using something that allows you to go and see the information and click to go further. And that is very, very typical. We've got 27% within there. We've got 20% using predictive, so fantastic. So hopefully, a lot of you people will be asking me some really good questions and challenging some of the stuff that we're going to be talking about today. And hopefully you will be learning some of the things that we're going to talk about, advanced ways of doing this or more modern techniques to employ for predictive. We've got a tie at the top with 7% in prescriptive and 7% with cognitive. And that's where the spelling error is, I apologize. Now, that's quite typical. Now, you expect really that cognitive is going to be much, much less than when it comes to prescriptive. However, prescriptive, that idea of running a model and changing some parameters to go and see what's the optimized outcome, is still very, very underutilized. Even though it's been around for decades, it's something which a lot of organizations are not really grasping very well. We'll come on to some of the why on that one. Prescriptive and predictive are quite well interlinked. So thank you very much for doing that. Okay, so the mid-market opportunity. I am very, very conscious as an organization that works heavily with mid-market. We do work with enterprises, small business as well, large-scale government organizations. But mid-market is the powerhouse of the UK and you can see other countries again, but I'm very much UK-centric in this conversation. And it gets left behind. So if you've attended a Gartner event or if you attended a Microsoft event, any sort of vendor event, they're going to tell you about how fantastic that large organizations have been in adopting these technologies and making huge impacts. Why do they do it? Well, when you're a very large organization, especially if you're in the public arena, then it is within your nature to share, to talk about the great things that you do. If you are valued based on a share price, you want to talk to your investor about the amazing things that you're doing. If you've had very, very high profile failures, when we talk about the likes of Blockbuster and people like that, it's in the news. An organization's got 20 people is not going to share that information. They are not going to be in the news. So it's very easy for these large organizations, research organizations, and also technology vendors to be able to talk about the big organizations. It makes it much, much easier. That's where the case studies are, and that's where people really want to go and talk about the great stuff that they do. So what is the difference between the enterprise and mid-market? Because if you speak to these research places, you'll think it's not for you. In an enterprise business, they can spend over £1 million on data lakes, data warehousing, bringing all that information together and enriching it. They can easily have 12 months plus as an implementation timeline. To be honest, when we work with enterprise organizations, 12 months is proof of concept. You're looking at 24 months into productionization. They also can have dedicated data science teams and DevOps support. So actually bringing together their infrastructure and their applications together for highly performant and highly secure systems. That is not necessarily accessible in the mid-market. So is mid-market, is it right for machine learning? Is it right for predictive analytics? Well, yes, we think so, and we see evidence of that. For you as a mid-market organization, or for those that are mid-market within this call, you've already invested in the Microsoft stack. So you already have accessible tools within there. There are lots and lots of players available here, but we are talking about Microsoft here because of the relevance to most businesses, most public sector organizations within the UK. I am yet to come across one of our customers or one of our prospects who says, no, we don't use Microsoft at all. We're completely Mac, Linux, etc. Okay. You will have access to things like Azure machine learning. If you don't know, anytime we say ML in this conversation, we are meaning machine learning. Okay, so effectively the predictive analytics engine. Fabric, Power BI, they are all available to you because you will be using Microsoft online services, but they are underutilized. And also what we find within mid-market is that we end up with these kind of 90-day pilots being run by analysts. If you don't have a team of analysts, it could be people who are pseudo-analysts. It could be an IT person, it could be a business person who takes that form of an analyst. But we find actually more agility. So, as I say at the bottom here, with the right approach, mid-sized organizations can move faster and more cost effectively than larger, slower enterprises. And your Microsoft investment really is the key to unlocking that. Again, if you consider a large organization to do anything, they'll go through governance hoops, they'll have to get other teams, they'll outsource to very, very large IT players, and all of a sudden, To just say, I'd like access to machine learning as a trial within Microsoft is something which is a bureaucracy nightmare. In mid-market, we can really be flexible there. So what does this mean? So what does prediction in action look like? So I'm going to go through 3 real use cases. So these are organizations that we've directly been engaged with. So you can ask some questions about this, but these organizations do not want us to go and talk about them specifically because there's some sensitivity in the work that we've done here. This one I'm very, very proud of, which is student churn prediction. So it's a higher education institution within the UK, and they faced rising student attrition. If you work in the academic space or work closely with the academic space, you'll realize this quote at the bottom, 70% of students consider leaving since starting their degree. There's a huge dropout rate. Now, in this scenario, we're not even talking about necessarily degrees, it's any level of higher education. Super important to us as a country to be able to go and raise skilling levels. Raises skill levels allows us to go and generate more business, GDP growth for the UK. And so you'll see that's why there's a lot of initiatives from the government around things like modern apprenticeships and apprenticeships for more experienced people who will want to go and augment their skills, especially in the evolving world of things like cybersecurity and AI. What we did was we used Azure machine learning, so a Microsoft tool, and we modeled the dropout risk based on academic, financial, and behavioral patterns. So what would be the reason that a student would look to go and leave that course? What we were able to do was find the key factors that impacted each of those students and started creating that risk model around each of them. That allowed the organization to go and focus their academic support to the ones that are most vulnerable in terms of being able to not wanting to carry on. Now, that led to a 12% improvement in their retention. The retention was already quite high, so it was quite a significant improvement within there. But also, not only did we manage to go and impact the outcomes for those students, if you imagine this is someone who maybe is going back to school, they want to change in their career. Maybe they are a parent who's actually taken time out of their career for childcare. They've gone back into education and have found it tough. By being able to identify those people who just need a little bit more support, and that could just be a bit of an arm around the shoulder, that transforms that outcome. So the work that we've done has directly led to people having better outcomes in the future in their lives, which we're very, very proud of. As a commercial organization, it also protected millions of pounds in tuition revenue. So if a student leaves year 1, then they're not paying for year 2 and year 3, and that isn't a seat that you can fill. So it's very, very important to be able to go and allow this organization to remain profitable and also generate better outcomes. So that's students, but you can probably consider where that would also apply into your organization if you took students out of the equation and started bringing in customer contracts. Being able to understand which customers may churn at the end of an agreement starts allowing you as an organization to do that hypercare and be able to put that arm around the shoulder of the client to make sure that they're getting what they need. It also allows you to go into that continuous improvement process to understand why it is that your customers might want to leave. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of food for thought within that. So the next one is retail demand forecasting. So very, very different industry. But we work across multiple national retailers, and they are varying. Some of them are very small IT teams, quite niche, with quite high-profile type brands. Some of them are mass appeal on every single high street type organizations. Within this one, it was one of the larger ones. But what we did was applied Microsoft Fabric and machine learning. We unified information. So when we talk about demand forecasting, it's very easy for us to just go and take information from one piece of information. What we did was collected it from lots of pieces of information, started bringing that together, just basic data warehousing, but still something that people neglect. And then we were able to go and create forecasting and demand forecasts within their stock management. It improved replenishment accuracy. So anytime you go to the supermarket on a Sunday, there's no bread on the shelf, That is because they've got really, really poor demand forecasting. We were able to make sure that the right stock was in the right place, which meant that they maximized their sales and also they minimized wastage. So the result, better margins, lower inventory write-offs, faster stock turn. And again, if you are in retail, distribution, you will recognize that as a challenge. McKinsey in 2024, they estimated that UK retailers lose £100 billion annually to avoidable forecasting errors. Now, you could very much consider, okay, yeah, but that's Tesco losing most of that money. No, it's not. It's actually the broad retailers, the more independent retailers, because at the enterprise level, they're already doing this. They're already very, very efficient. So it's actually efficiency loss within the mid-market and low. Okay. Financial risk prediction. So this is another area that we look at. So not only just necessarily forecasting what will happen, but forecasting where risk exists so that we can actually say, okay, this could be fraudulent activity or this could be risk that becomes apparent. So UK government departments, we work with quite a few of them, but we look at people like DWP and HMRC. They use data matching, anomaly detection, and predictive modeling to tackle fraud and error. And I think this is quite a scary statistic. This is genuinely a government statistic, is that fraud and error cost the taxpayer between 55 billion and 81 billion within the 2023-2024 tax year. UK Finance did a study on this, and they say that their predictive AI models are widely used for fraud detection, but they did say that generative AI is still emerging. So again, all of these other sessions that you have on generative AI, which we still believe is a fantastic opportunity, let's start with the basics and actually bring predictive analytics in there, because that's where we're seeing success. And in that project, it reduced the treasury risk, so maintaining the finances, increased the fraud capture, and improved audit transparency. Three very, very different uses of predictive analytics. So what are the lessons from the field? So what these reveal is it creates value, predictive analytics, when it's tied to real business pain points or opportunity, but not just when it's used as a technology experiment. And you will find that there will be a disconnect in your organization, I guarantee it, between your business and your technologists. The differentiator for predictive analytics is operational integration. So that is any model that influences action directly. So being able to say, if we do this, this is the cause and impact. And if we analyze this, this is what we get out of it. So we have to make sure it's linked. Quite often, the business and IT are so disparate that IT do not understand how to help their organization, and the organization does not know what to ask for. What is the art of the possible? Okay, so we've got to bring those things together, and that's where we really sit as that consulting organization, trying to help those businesses do that. Tools like Fabric and Azure machine learning, they lower the technical barrier. A lot of these things are low-code, no-code type arrangements now, but only succeed if it's aligned to the business strategy. And each of these actually started with a small scale use case first. It was clear alignment to KPIs, and they scaled it once it was proven. Okay, this whole, how do you eat an elephant? You cannot go and create an entire machine learning or AI strategy that says this is what the end goal looks like. It has to be a journey and start small. So start with what matters. It works best to solve targeted, high impact problems, and then you need to measure that outcome. That again is a big challenge. We think this will be an impact, we go and do it, and then we say, what was the impact of it? We have no idea. And then you'll have people arguing that we should go further into that, when actually the business has no evidence for why it could be benefited. There's a lot of moving parts here. So how do we measure those outcomes? All right, so what tools are used? So I'm going to go into a little bit of technology here. We talked about Microsoft, and again, there's lots and lots of other tools that we can use here. But we want to go and pick out specifically Microsoft Azure and Microsoft Fabric, because we get a lot of questions about the difference and about what really is the advantage of one over the other. So within those scenarios that we talked about, we end up with data sources. We bring those into a data warehouse. So this is where you can see that Azure Data Factory piece is bringing that information and then pushing it into a data store. And that data store can be Synapse or Databricks, where actually we've got that information that's transforming and processing that information, kind of a pass-through service. Then we're pushing that into Azure machine learning, where we're creating those machine learning models, and we're looking at the factors that impact those models before we then store it for analysis in something like Azure SQL. We say Azure SQL / storage because a lot of you will know that now, rather than putting it into database, we're putting things into, say, Parquet storage, unstructured type files. And then we use something like Power BI to go visualize the predictions and the insight. And that is completely valid. Within Microsoft Fabric, we actually do it all in one platform. So Data Factory is built into the platform. With that data engineering, rather than using Synapse, we could be using Spark notebooks, still be using Databricks within there, but that can be done inside Fabric. Within data science, we can build machine learning models. We've got ML Flow within there. We've got machine learning capabilities all within the product. And then we've got the data warehousing. No, we don't have structured data warehousing like SQL within Fabric at the moment, but that is coming soon. Azure SQL will be present within Microsoft Fabric very soon. It's currently in preview. And then we've got fully integrated Power BI within there as well to visualize the predictions and insight all in one. Underneath it, though, you'll see one big difference between the top and the bottom is OneLake, which is this unified data foundation. We're not going to go into the specifics of the systems at the moment. If you've not seen OneLake, that is a very, very accessible data platform, which can actually even present in your Explorer. So when you're looking at your files and you can see your OneDrive, you can now go and see your data within OneLake, and you can drag and drop Excel files in there to create tables, or you can go and analyze information from there. Very, very accessible. It's a very cool product to be able to have a look. If you want to know more, contact me. Happy to go through a demo. But what are the advantages between the two? Because this is the bit where people get really confused. The top one is individual services. The bottom one is functions within one service. So what are the differences? So on the individual Azure tools, we've got the advanced machine learning capabilities. We've got granular cost control, flexible architecture choices, including on-premise for some of these products. We've got custom compute scaling, which sounds very complicated, but it means that each of those components can go and scale differently. We've got third-party tool integration, and we've got specialized service features in there, which means that fundamentally, when you hear of something like Data Factory, which you may have heard of within an individual Azure tool, and Data Factory as a service within Fabric, they are different. People don't understand that. They are different. Individual Azure tools are specialized. Microsoft Fabric is a unified platform where some of those may have more limited features or specifically integrated features, should I say. Fabric has a single interface across the whole thing, so this is all in one web experience. You don't need to move data. The data effectively, as it gets into that platform, is all in there. It can stay in there. It can all be used within there. So that's really good for things like sort of shadow IT costs and things like that. You've got integrated security and governance, which is an absolute must these days. So that makes it much easier than securing across lots and lots of different systems. And you've also got real-time model scoring within there. You've got real-time movement of data. So if anyone is using highly transactional systems, maybe in a retail setting, the ability to real-time stream that information into there, and also that real-time score of your models. The model that you develop today will absolutely be out of date tomorrow, the next day, the next day, the next day, because the world changes. And so the ability to go and score that model continuously is a big advantage. Okay. For most predictive analytics projects, Fabric is likely the better choice just because of the contained nature on it. In terms of commercial model, the individual Azure tools all have different commercial models. Microsoft Fabric has one, which is effectively consumption. The more you use, the more you pay, and you buy it in individual buckets. I get asked a lot of questions in terms of what happens if I use it all. You can automatically scale it, and then it will scale down once your usage is there. So there is a very, very well predictive way of understanding your consumption, and we can help with those calculations if you want to as well. Okay, so that's a little bit of the technical stuff. That's a little bit of the technologies that we're talking about here. Okay. Okay. So where do these projects go wrong? Now I've said AI projects go wrong. I am old school, and when I talk about machine learning, it is AI. So I do use that term. Machine learning is a facet of AI. But where do they go wrong? So fears over data security is a big one. Let's go and bring all this information together, start creating predictive models, and people worry about misalignment of information, especially if we are working in a sort of B2C type environment where we've got personal information there. They may worry about using that for predictive models, especially in public sector, where you are potentially looking at prejudicial outcomes. So data, IT, security, and business teams, they speak different languages, have misaligned priorities. There's unclear success metrics. You cannot, there's no way anyone walks into a business and says, right, I have a stack of money, I'm going to just spend it on this project and see what happens. But that is kind of what's happening with these tools because they're so accessible. People are playing with them. They're not providing value. People are then turning them off. AI hype skips the foundation. You will no doubt have a board of directors, investors, whatever your seniority is, that's saying, you know, AI is just going to fix all of this. AI is the answer. And so that means that people are skipping that maturity model, going from basics up to the more advanced pieces. So we need to make sure we're aligned on that maturity model. There is a tool-first mentality without strategy. Now, we curate a lot of the market and analyze a lot of the tools. We think you can't really go wrong with something like Microsoft, or if you go to AWS, or if you go to Google. But people are getting drawn into these shiny tools without thinking strategy first. And also misplaced trust. Just because it says it, it doesn't mean it's right. So being able to validate those answers before they go into production and even after they go into production is really, really important. Otherwise, you have an over-reliance and a bad actor. All right. So the consideration. So place your strategy before your tooling. What is the problem? What behavior or risk are we trying to predict? Okay, and start thinking about what that word predict means, because finding fraudulent transactions is still a predictive process. Map where you are in capability, culture, and technology. Culture is a really weird one. People don't think about culture when it comes into predictive analytics, but it's really, really important. A feedback loop. Being able to align your business to your technology people. That is all cultural stuff, which most businesses get wrong. You need to make sure it's there. So actually bringing teams together as a bit of a cross-functional team to say this is the team working on this allows a sharing of those different ideas. Engage the right stakeholders. So as I just said there, bringing leadership, subject matter experts, security. Security needs to be part of this conversation. Technical experts as well. Assess the tools, the technologies, and the models. There are lots of different predictive models you can use, but assess them for the fit to support your solution. That can sometimes mean running multiple as well. So how can we help? So we do data and AI maturity assessments, which is a framework. Now, if you don't use this with us, just think of this yourself. What is your strategy? Your architecture, your skills, your literacy, your process, your security. Literacy is a really important one. I have a big bugbear, the fact that dashboards quite often fail because we give dashboards to people and then we have to go and send them on a data literacy course to be able to understand how to use it. So we need to go and improve the literacy of our people in terms of data analysis, but we also need to think about how we serve them better by giving them meaningful insights that are explainable and not something that someone has to have a PhD to understand the output. We're consultative-led in how we do that, and we produce gap analysis. I like this from Peter Drucker. You can't optimize what you don't understand, so you need to know where you are. From a roadmap advisory service, again, things that you can do yourselves, but understand that maturity and prioritize your initiatives. This is not a let's do everything. Clarify the roles, the data flows, the governance, and the KPIs. Data flows is a really important one. On average, mid-market organizations use over 100 sources of data within the organization. You look at that and go, that's crazy, that's far too many. But if you start to think about all of the pockets of information that you get internally that you create, even Excel files, maybe using Power Platform to go and create some web forms, you're using online resources as well. All of those soon add up. And being able to go and bring those together allows you to go and get more contextualized information for your predictive analytics. And then support early wins and that long-term change program. What we always want to do is go in there and prove value. Okay, this is like a fail fast mentality. Prove the value. From there, it will justify the next project. It will allow us learning to the next project. So for people who've been around long enough to understand the whole battles between waterfall and agile type methodologies, waterfall, let's make an aircraft carrier and go and plan the whole thing, deliver it for the next 20 years, and we're definitely going to be over time, over budget, and it probably doesn't even serve the purpose. It's the nature of public sector for our country for many, many years, and large organizations. When we look at more agile type methodologies, we are fail first. It's more about uncovering what we want to go and do now. There is some big things in the future that we just don't define right now, but they're aspirational, and then we move through that process. It helps get onboarding from decision makers within the organization too. Bringing in that strategy, so this is from BCG, but they say organizations with a data strategy are 3 times more likely to realize value from AI. Okay, so this is data strategy, this is machine learning, this is AI. That includes generative AI as well, but we need to go strategically understand that. And that is the thing that will allow our technical teams to go and link and understand more about the business. So we do think that these give foundation for success. We can do them. You can do them yourselves. So your roadmap forward. So success requires a crawl, walk, run strategy on this, okay? You need to assess your data maturity, identify your data silos, and the security concerns. Please bring security governance right in at the start here, because it's very hard to go and do it retrospectively, and it's even much more harder once you've really messed this up and data's got out into the public domain or whatever, or you've made bad decisions. You've got to look at the quick wins versus your long-term transformations. When you get that right, you can start to walk. Develop the data and AI strategy. Notice I didn't say develop the data and AI strategy first. Okay, we said strategy before tooling and things like that. But a broad data strategy should be influenced by a little bit of experience. So you can go and do these quick wins at a smaller level before you then go and present the benefit as a business case to your wider business, which gets buy-in for that big strategy piece. Engage in low-risk, high-value pilots and enable the team and raise awareness. Awareness is really important. It prevents silo thinking. It starts bringing brilliant ideation. It starts allowing other people to go and pick up risks. And also, it genuinely gets people behind the idea that AI can go and form change. Predictive analytics can form change. Then you go to run. Create centers of excellence. So those little pilot teams that you've had, all of a sudden, someone from a non-technical domain says, I want to be a manager of these kind of projects in the future. You start bringing those people together where they can really advocate and use that shared experience to go and drive you forward. It's an acceleration. You share knowledge across the teams and agencies. We say agencies here because we work with a lot of public sector, and so they will work across multiple agencies to share the results of that. But track the outcomes and the ROI. You must do that for success. Okay? Otherwise, you're just spending money on things you hope work. Don't wait for perfection. Success comes from starting small, scaling with evidence. Okay? And this is from Peter Carl, the Secretary of State for Science, Innovation and Technology. This is around the government's use of AI and predictive technologies. So together we use AI to drive productivity and economic growth in every part of the country so that we can make everyone better off. And productivity is the goal here. Okay, so I'm going to move on to some questions, but before I do, just talk to us about the data and AI maturity assessments, the analytics roadmap development, data and AI strategy, and also Microsoft-funded proof of value. Yeah, these guys have got a lot of money, and they will happily share that if we can go and do some really good projects with you guys. Doesn't have to be heavily innovative. It can just be a new use of these data technologies that you've not used before. We can secure Microsoft funding for the proof of value and also for the implementation services. So speak to us about that. And also, we're very proud of our data risk assessment solution, which are working with a leader in the industry, actually the only people who can really do data risk assessment across structured, unstructured data, whether it's in SaaS, whether it's hosted in the cloud, or whether it's on-premise as well. Brilliant. Well, that's the end of what I had to talk to you about. I've got a few questions in here. Some frequent flyers in previous sessions for questions, so thank you about that. So retail demand forecasting, an extension of just-in-time management. No, I don't think it is. I think just-in-time management, so for those of you who don't know what that is making sure that effectively you are kind of looking very quickly at the here and now, but making sure that you are behind the demand, but only just. Now, within just-in-time management, the advantage of that is you are seriously decreasing waste because you are effectively making sure that things are available only that are going to go out the door. So that's really, really important. But it depends on the type of organization that you are. If you've got retail, which is, let's say, is homeware, that stuff isn't necessarily going to go out of date, in which case your wastage is going to be low. If you're in food production or food retail, then absolutely you will want to make sure that you're not wasting food to go out of date. However, for organizations that have a highly predictive footfall into retail stores and things like that, so if you imagine things like if you go to a Tesco or an Asda or a Waitrose or something and look at their lunch section, what you will find there is that they will be well stocked at the times of high demand. You'll also find that if you go in there late on a Sunday night, there'll be no sandwiches left. Okay, so what they're trying to do is make sure that they're optimizing to reduce the amount of waste and go and support the customer demand. So, yeah, I understand your point. Just in time is very much a humanistic planning, whereas demand forecasting here is very much more of an evidence-based planning based on information and predictions. Do AI projects fail because there is no clear strategy and an ethics board? Ethics is a really interesting one. I don't think you need an ethics board, but I do think that ethics needs to be represented, especially if what you're doing makes decisions on people's outcomes. There was actually, we work quite a lot on policing. There was one of the police forces who, in the early days of modern AI, which I know sounds very, very an oxymoron really, but they actually started using criminal profiling techniques. They were the first organisation in the whole of the UK to be fined for prejudicial actions because they were using historical crime information and obviously they were using racial profiling to go and do that kind of stop and search or crime follow-up type activity. Now, how do you resolve that? Ethics needs to be at the table. If you are a large organization, if you are a public body, I would recommend that ethics is actually discussed from an outside perspective. So bringing someone in to be able to go and look and counter argument your ethics decisions from outside, where they're not influenced by the need of the organization, they're influenced by their role. So I think that's important. What do we mean by governance? Okay, so it's a really good question. What do I mean by governance? So governance is effectively controlling information, controlling a flow of a process according to a standard. Now, it could be a very loose standard, but for instance, we would understand that from a governance perspective, we will always anonymize personal information because this is a dashboard about health. We're making predictive analytics decisions, risk factors based on someone's lifestyle factors, which is something that we've done in the past, but we do not want to go and disclose maybe who that person is. So it gives us a broad brush within them. So applying anonymization, pseudo-anonymization techniques is maybe something that we define within governance. Other aspects, which are maybe seen more superficial, is how long do we keep data? So how long is data useful for us? I do work in the academic space. I'm going through academia myself at the moment. And one of the things that I find is anytime I look for evidence of information to support an argument, I basically will only look at things within the last 3 years. Why? The world was very, very different before that. So the period of COVID, the period just after COVID, was highly transformative, highly changeable. So is the information that we collect within there really representation of how we're going to predict our future? But also, the digital transformation change that happened as a result of COVID means that actually even information before it is really, really hard to go and take seriously. It's hard to go and say that is a representation of life now. No, it depends on your industry. But if we were to go and talk about high street retail, for instance, which you've seen, we've been working with some of those, then actually the footfall, the buying habits have changed massively. Yeah, we know that the high street is under threat. There are fewer shops that are investing in high street. Everything has moved to online, and even an older generation who were resistant to online retailing were forced into it in that COVID era and have remained within there. So yeah, governance is all encompassing. How do we secure data? How do we anonymize data? What are we going to use the data for? Who is going to use the data? When are they going to use the data? And what data is actually relevant to us going forward? And that can be because of relevance to the information, but also because of security concern. Let's say we agree that we're only going to keep customer information for 3 years. Then we need to make sure that that is brought out of that data set and hopefully cleaned away from the data stores. So great question. Really appreciate that. Just looking at some of the others. So we've been asked about learning. So we get asked this a lot. So when we do this, a lot of the audience are business professionals who want to go and apply this. We got a lot of people, and very, very welcome, who are students, people learning in this or actually starting into business where they're wanting to go and take that step. So how can you learn about this? Well, when it comes to the Microsoft resources, go to Microsoft Learn. Microsoft have an enormous amount of training materials on there for free that you can go forward with. You can't necessarily get access to some of the labs where you can get hands-on. You will have to pay for those kind of services, but you will be able to go and do a lot of that theoretical learning within Microsoft, and even go and get badges and sort of small accreditations and things like that that you can go and put on your LinkedIn. LinkedIn is another good place. Now, obviously, it's heavily intrinsically linked to Microsoft. Microsoft bought it, but LinkedIn Learning is another really good source to go and have a look. This is a fast-moving area when you move up into generative AI. Machine learning is actually quite a slow-moving area, but it is being better adopted. But I would go and look at like-minded communities. Reddit is fantastic. Some brilliant subreddits where you can go and get access to information here. People can go and ask questions that get answered, and that might inspire some knowledge learning from themselves. So someone's asked about using Microsoft services already, and how. So if I move to Fabric, do I have to move all of the Azure services? No, you don't. Absolutely not. So we talked about Fabric before. You can use Fabric, and you can still use the other standalone services. So if you wanted to use Azure Data Factory and use all of the grunt and the power of the standalone product and use that commercial model, you absolutely can, and you can use other things within Fabric. It's highly interoperable. We actually do have one customer who has purchased Fabric just for Power BI. And actually, there's another question here regarding Power BI licenses. So some of you will use Power BI Pro or Premium. And some of you may have used the old capacity product where effectively you're just buying sort of simultaneous usage of Power BI as opposed to individual licenses. That's gone now, and it's only available within Fabric. So we do have some organizations who buy Fabric just for that Power BI consumption piece. But of course, if you are in Fabric, you do have access to everything that's within there on that consumption model. So it's a really good playground area to learn, experiment, to go improve some of these business cases before you move into pilots. What is demand forecasting? So demand forecasting is heavily used as a concept within distribution, retail, manufacturing, but ultimately understanding who wants your product. Now, that doesn't have to be used within those industries that I've talked about. We actually have worked very heavily within the health industry, so where hospitals look at demand forecasting. So as the winter comes in, more rain, more ice, A&E's demand goes up. So people want to use the service more. I mean, obviously they don't want to use the service, but they have to use the service. So you get a lot of elderly people having what's called slips, trips, and falls. So pretty self-explanatory, and then rushed into A&E to go and to help them out. So that is understanding demand. So being able to go and understand your normal run rate of how many people come in, which is going to be based on your local population, then overlaying weather patterns, can actually help hospitals understand when their demand is going to go up. What can they do about it? They can call in agency staff. They can work with other hospital departments to be able to start moving people out as early as possible, working with care to be able to go and move people out of A&E beds out into care and things like that. That is all the sort of stuff that demand forecasting allows you to do. When it comes to retail, as I say, who is going to buy the product? Therefore, it allows us to get ready for that. That is fundamentally demand forecasting. Can I have a copy of the presentation? Absolutely. So Gio, who is on the call with us today, will collect everyone's information. If you haven't provided us with a copy of your email address when you're signed up, or if you want us to go and specifically send it somewhere, then if you drop it into the chat, into the Q&A, then Gio will forward on a copy of the presentation. Okay. I think there's a few that's repetitive questions that I may have answered already. If there's any others, feel free to come in. So yeah, okay, I think I've answered everything there. Look, if there's anything else that you have as a question, feel free to contact us. The email address is at the bottom of the slide, hello@cybit.com, or you can contact me directly. It's rob.hankin at cybit.com. Feel free to go and send some questions through, and very, very happy to engage with you going forward. And that's everything from us. So have a fantastic day, and hopefully we'll see even more of you at the next one. So thank you.